Okay, this is just a quick example tutorial that I'm throwing together on the spur of the moment as an example of the kind of stuff that I do. And we're going to start off by creating a new file. Now, how do I do that on these keys on this key? I think it's... First I have to switch to the right program, and then this one? Yes, that's it. Okay. So yeah, I want to create a new file. Yes. I'm so good at this shit. Yeah. Yeah, let me begin by just kind of roughing out a couple of things. Now, first things first, we need to talk a little bit about the difference in form between a man's body, which I'm going to do right here, and a woman's body, which I'm going to do off to the side. Now, a man's body has obviously a rib cage, and he has a pelvis, and coming off of the pelvis you have the great trochanter, and up here you have the shoulder, and the arms typically hang in a kind of a counterbalanced form with the elbow coming in right about at the edge of the rib cage, right there. Now your wrists are right here, again at the same level there as the great trochanter, and then here's your hand and your fingers, and your thumb would be back here on the other side. Okay, then down here you got your leg. All right, and you'll see here that the male leg is angled at the back and it's flat at the front, and it has a very high bulge in the calf right here. Now you've got a straight back, straight front here, and then here's your foot down here at the bottom. Now the center of your foot right here should go right between the this is awful. I'm doing a terrible job here. Let me back off of this and hold on. Let me just move that, scroll into a good location, and delete that, remove that. I'm I have no idea what I'm doing. Yeah, and just bump the microphone with my head because, you know, that's cool. So anyway, we're going to do this. We're going to use a couple extra layers on top of that. So beginning once again, we're going to go back to our brush, and we're going to draw out a quick male form. Here's the spine, here's the pelvis, here's the rib cage right here. Now let me create a new layer, and then on this layer I'm going to do a few more things. Now we're going to switch to a kind of pinkish color. Now there's a muscle that comes out here. You're familiar with the chest muscle, and underneath of the chest muscle, which comes around here and attaches to the arm, underneath of that you've got the rectus abdominis, which comes down over everything right here. And you've got again the great trochanter. And the great trochanter and the shoulder joint, we should really kind of do those in white to show that these are bones. We'll just kind of trust that they're there. Yeah, they're there. Okay, and now back to our muscle layer up here. Now you've also got a sheet of muscle on the back right there. Now you'll notice that the torso is curved backward, and the reason that the torso is curved backward is this space here. Let me make a new layer for that. Now inside of this space here, we're going to do kind of a bluish color for that. Inside of here you've got some guts. The guts down here are nice and solid, and they weigh something. This moves the center of gravity downward. That keeps your center of gravity, COG, moving down, and those are some terrible, and those are again some terrible letters, COG. But your internal organs up here are mostly lungs, and the lungs are hollow, so they don't weigh anything. So while you've got kind of a counterbalance here, you've got weight up here in the front, you've got weight back here in the back, you've got weight right here in the middle. Up here toward the top, you got weight on the back, you got weight on the front, and you got nothing in the middle. And because you got nothing in the middle, you need that backward tilt to the spine, which means, first of all, this is another important one. Let me turn off that layer. You see that, select the right layer here. Again, in the blue, we're going to lower the size of it. You see that if you draw a line straight up, that's a shitty job. You draw a line straight up from the great trochanter, it doesn't pass through the shoulder. It passes just in front of the neck here, about through the chin. It's like, here's your jaw, here's your chin, there's the back of the head. That line passes about through the chin. And you can see that if you stand up and you just kind of think about a line coming down from your chin, it comes down about through your hip. Meanwhile, your shoulder is a bit farther back. It tends to be underneath your ear, right there. And it sits a little bit farther back. Okay? Now, because those are out of alignment, a lot of people draw this kind of stiff pose where your person's standing and here's a leg and here's an arm, and that doesn't look right. That does not look right at all. Even if you get your proportions correct and you got your hand coming down here, that does not look right at all, because your shoulder here has to go behind the hip. Okay? That needs to move back. That needs to be rotated a little bit. Okay? So that needs to come farther back, or it just doesn't look right. So you've got the hip here. Let me switch back to the brush. You got the hip and you got the shoulder, and the shoulder is behind the hip. It has to be. And down here at the bottom of the leg, you've got a foot. And the center of your foot should be right between those. Your ankle's probably lined up with the shoulder or a little bit behind. Your toes are probably lined up with the hip or a little bit in front because of the way that the male body is structured. Now let me marquee that and get it out of the way. And I missed a bit here, and I missed a bit here. And let's move the canvas back into position. Remove that, go back to my brush, blah. So anyway, here you've got the basic structure of the male form. Now there's a difference with the female form, and it comes in two major variants. And those two major variants are, first of all, with your skeletal structure here, that box of the pelvis is pushed farther down. And the reason it's pushed farther down is, if you think about in here, if you think about in that area with the guts, okay? We go back to our gut color. You got all of the same guts that a guy has, right? Plus you have a uterus, which is about the size of a football. That has to be crammed into that same space. It has to go underneath of the rib cage. You got all of the same organs inside the rib cage, so there's no room inside the rib cage for it. It has to go underneath of the rib cage. So because it has to go underneath of the rib cage and in front, it is pushing the front of the pelvis down. So you get what we call an anterior pelvic tilt, okay? And that anterior pelvic tilt means that your woman appears to be leaning back, but she's also got to lean back even more. Incidentally, this is, when you look at a woman, you look at a guy, the guy's got a butt that comes off like that. And a girl's got a butt that comes off like that, which gives a slightly different feel to the back of the leg. Okay? And that is another aspect of the female anatomy that just kind of goes into the whole thing. But let's come back up here to our muscle layer, and we'll jump in here and do here's that muscle in the back, and here's that muscle in the front. She's got the same chest muscle you do, but then on top of that chest muscle, she's got a breast. And that breast means because you've got that counterbalance. We already saw that the man has to lean back a little bit because of the mass of his chest muscle. A woman has less chest muscle, but this breast is protruding out farther, and that leverage forces her to lean back even farther than a guy. So her spine has to have even more of a curve in it, which pulls that rib cage back, and it stretches in both directions. It stretches those abdominal muscles. So the abdominal muscles stretch, which gives the woman a flatter looking stomach. Okay, her six-pack is less developed. She has less of a ripple going on in the stomach because, number one, a woman has an additional layer of fat that a man doesn't have, and number two, she's got those muscles stretched out, and because the muscles are stretched out, they appear flatter. And she has to do that because of the mass of the breast, but more importantly, the thing you especially have to consider when you're doing like anime and manga style drawings, if you draw a woman with truly huge breasts, which a lot of people do, I don't get it, but a lot of people do, she's got to lean back even farther. That backward lean has to become more and more pronounced because, again, that center of gravity, you're going to have that great trochanter and you're going to have the shoulder, and you want the center of the foot in between them. But as you put more weight out here, that's going to weight her forward. And because it weights her forward, she's going to have to lean farther and farther back. And that's why women with big breasts are always complaining about back pain, because they got to lean back to counterbalance the breasts. That's a lot of work. It's a lot of work, and it's a lot of effort. And because of that, you get this constant that moves backward, which moves this forward, which means the foot has to sit in between. The center of the foot has to go in between the shoulder and the hip, which means that as she leans farther and farther back, okay, her feet need to come farther and farther back. So you get this very distinct kind of swoop to a woman's legs. And you can exaggerate that, but it's the larger the breasts become, the more those feet have to move back. And as those feet move back, then the shoulders move back. So that gives you this very kind of exaggerated swooping motion and that forward thrust to the legs. And you can really kind of see that. And I was really noticing it in Ray Zero and Amelia. Amelia really has that forward lean to her legs. So if you take a look at that one, that's got pretty much the kind of thing that I'm talking about. Anyway, this is this, for what it's worth. This I hope you learned something from this crap. I have no idea what I'm doing.